Standard news coverage of the Middle East focuses almost entirely on the kinetic spectacle of nighttime missile strikes and visible explosions. These images obscure a structural logic that has very little to do with territory, religion, or historical grievances. The actual targets are the incentives and institutions of the global financial system, the very structures that allow the United States to project influence across the globe. This is a structural attack designed to break the foundational arrangements of the modern global order. This system traces back to the 1970s, when the United States reached a specific agreement with the oil-producing nations of the Persian Gulf. Gulf states committed to selling their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. Since every industrialized nation requires energy, this arrangement created a constant global demand for American currency. In exchange for this pricing mechanism, the United States provided a military security umbrella over the Gulf, promising to protect regional energy exports from any disruption. Wealthy desert cities like Dubai were built on this foundation of stability. Investors and international businesses moved there because they believed the United States could guarantee their safety indefinitely. If that perception of absolute safety disappears, the economic model of the Gulf and the dollar's rolled. Physical geography dictates the strategic logic of this confrontation. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply must navigate through the Strait of Hormuz, an incredibly narrow choke point that remains highly vulnerable to disruption. On one side of this waterway, Iran is protected by rugged mountain ranges. This terrain acts as a natural fortress, making the country's interior resistant to conventional air campaigns. These mountains allow military planners to house drone facilities and missile bases deep underground, shielding them from external strikes. The Gulf states face the opposite reality. Their territory is largely flat, exposed desert, where billions of dollars in critical infrastructure sit in the open. This geographical asymmetry allows an attacker to project power from hidden mountain positions, while forcing a defender to protect stationary targets across hundreds of miles of flat land. The primary targets of this economic warfare include the sprawling networks of oil refineries and energy terminals that form the backbone of the region's wealth. An even more sensitive vulnerability is the region's water supply. Massive, stationary desalination plants provide the majority of the drinking water for Gulf cities, making them critical strategic nodes. Threatening these facilities relies on the math of attrition. A simple drone carrying a small explosive payload costs as little as $50,000 to produce. In contrast, a single interceptor missile fired by a defending naval ship can cost millions of dollars, creating a massive financial imbalance in every engagement. When these exchanges happen hundreds or thousands of times, the sheer cost of protection drains the resources of even the most powerful military. The objective is to bankrupt the defensive systems of the superpower, proving that its security umbrella can no longer protect the infrastructure that sustains the petrodollar system. Both sides are currently engaged in a strategic game of chicken, where each has the capability to destroy the civil infrastructure of the other. U.S. policymakers face a difficult choice. Historically, stopping this form of asymmetric warfare requires a massive ground invasion, as bombing campaigns rarely produce a complete political collapse. Since the American public has no desire for another large-scale ground war in the Middle East, regional allies remain vulnerable to ongoing strikes. Escalation beyond this point would lead to energy price spikes and the disruption of manufacturing in Asian industrial hubs like India and South Korea. Without the political will for decisive intervention, long-term stability in the Gulf remains out of reach. Global investors and wealth managers are now watching missiles fly over cities that were previously considered safe zones. This creates capital flight. International businesses relocate, wealthy residents leave, and the oil wealth that previously flowed into Western markets starts moving toward other financial centers. As the promise of security in the Gulf fails, the petrodollar loses its primary anchor, rerouting economic leverage away from the United States. This conflict marks the conclusion of the unipolar American financial order and the beginning of a more fragmented, multipolar world.